My name's Tanya Reed. I'm 28, a fashion designer with everything to prove. My younger brother got me kicked out of my first big fashion pitch. I'd poured my soul into a sustainable clothing line, every sketch, every seam perfect. The investors were captivated, ready to sign until he swapped my designs with fakes littered with mistakes. The room burst into mocking laughter. Security escorted me out, my face burning with shame. My parents didn't care. "You're useless." My mom sneered, her voice ice cold. "Grow up." My dad muttered, not even looking at me. I stood there, heart racing, but I didn't scream or plead. I grabbed my bag, walked out of their Boise home, and swore they'd regret it. That was the spark that ignited Harper Designs. I promised myself I'd build a brand they could never touch, turning their betrayal into my strength. They thought they could break me, take what was mine, even smear my name. But I had a plan, waiting for the day to show them who I really am. That day came, and it flipped everything. If you've ever been stabbed in the back and want to see how I turned their lies into my victory, hit that subscribe button and join me to watch their regret unfold. Moving back to my parents' house in Boise was supposed to be temporary. I'd been scraping by as a fashion designer, pouring every dollar into my sustainable clothing line, Harper Designs. Rent was eating me alive, so I figured crashing with mom and dad would give me a chance to focus. Big mistake. From the moment I stepped through the door, it was clear where their priorities lay. My younger brother Jonah was their golden child, a failed entrepreneur who somehow still had them wrapped around his finger. They'd gush over his half-baked business ideas, while my sketches and fabric swatches got nothing but eye rolls. Another dress, my mom June would scoff, tossing my portfolio aside. Stick to something practical. My dad Hugh was worse, always comparing me to Jonah. "He's got ambition," he'd say, as if my late nights at the sewing machine were just a hobby. Jonah soaked it up, strutting around like he owned the place, bragging about his next big deal despite his string of flops. I bit my tongue, kept my head down, and worked. Harper Designs was my way out, my chance to prove them wrong. I spent months preparing for a startup fair in Boise, a shot at landing investors for my eco-friendly collection. I'd designed every piece to be bold yet sustainable: organic cotton, recycled linen dyes that didn't choke the planet. The night before, I laid out my portfolio, triple-checking every detail. Jonah passed by, smirking. "Good luck, sis," he said, his tone dripping with something I couldn't place. I ignored it, too focused on the stakes. This pitch could change everything. The fair was buzzing, designers, buyers, and investors packed into a convention center. My booth stood out, draped in my signature fabrics, with mannequins showcasing my best work. I was nervous but ready, my pitch memorized, my passion undeniable. Investors stopped by, asking sharp questions about production costs and market fit. I had answers, data, even samples they could touch. Their nods gave me hope. Then it was time for my big presentation on the main stage. I stepped up, projector ready, my heart steady. I clicked to the first slide, expecting my vibrant designs. Instead, the screen showed a mess: crooked patterns, clashing colors, amateurish mock-ups that weren't mine. Gasps turned to snickers from the crowd. An investor in the front row shook his head. "Is this a joke?" he muttered. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the slides, each one worse than the last. Someone had swapped my designs with fakes, sabotaging me in front of everyone. The moderator cut me off. "We're done here," she said sharply. Security ushered me off the stage as whispers filled the room. Back at the house, I was shaking, replaying the disaster. I confronted Jonah, who was lounging on the couch, scrolling his phone. "Did you touch my files?" I demanded. He shrugged, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Maybe you're just not cut out for this," he said. June overheard and jumped in. "Don't blame him for your failure, Tanya. You're such a disappointment." Hugh didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Focus on something real, like your brother," he said. Their words hit like a slap, but I stayed calm. I wasn't going to break in front of them. That evening, my phone rang. It was my dad's sister, Aunt Beverly, the only one who ever saw my potential. "Tanya, you don't need their approval," she said, her voice warm but firm. "That house is toxic. Get out and don't look back." She told me about her own fights to be taken seriously, how she'd walked away from family expectations to build her life. Her words lit something in me, not anger but clarity. I didn't belong here surrounded by people who'd rather see me fail. That night, I stood in my childhood bedroom staring at the sketches pinned to the wall. Every line was a piece of me, a dream they couldn't understand. I didn't owe them an explanation. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed, packed my essentials laptop sketchbook, a few bolts of fabric, and zipped it shut. Harper Designs wasn't just a brand, it was my fight. I wasn't running away, I was starting over. As I closed the door behind me, I felt lighter, like I'd shed their weight. Boise's streets stretched out in the dark, and I knew I was done letting them define me. After walking out, I crashed with my college friend in Boise. Seth welcomed me into his small apartment, a cluttered space with mismatched furniture and takeout boxes stacked on the counter. "You're not going back there?" he said, tossing me a spare key. I nodded, grateful for a friend who didn't ask for explanations. My suitcase sat in the corner, holding my sketchbook laptop and a few fabric scraps, everything I had left of Harper Designs. I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting from less than that. The next morning, I walked into a tailoring shop downtown owned by Ronald Morgan. The place smelled of thread and steam, with racks of half-finished garments lining the walls. I'd heard of Ronald, a gruff guy who'd been in the business for decades, known for precision. "You any good with a needle?" he asked, barely looking up from a suit jacket. I showed him my portfolio, the one my parents had dismissed. He grunted, unimpressed, but handed me an apron. "Prove it," he said. I took the job on the spot, determined to learn everything he could teach me. Days turned into weeks of stitching hems, adjusting seams, and watching Ronald work. He wasn't warm, but he was fair, pointing out my mistakes without sugarcoating. "Your lines are sloppy," he'd say, ripping out a stitch. "Do it right." I soaked it up, refining my technique, learning how to make eco-friendly fabrics hold their shape. At night, I'd sketch at Seth's kitchen table, designing pieces that could compete in Boise's growing fashion scene. Seth, who worked as a graphic designer, would peek over my shoulder. "That jacket's fire," he'd say, pointing to a recycled denim piece. His encouragement kept me grounded. My phone buzzed one evening with a call from Aunt Beverly. "You're tougher than they think," she said, her voice steady. She told me about her own battles, leaving home young, fighting for a career in journalism when her family called it a waste. "They don't get to define you," she said. I held on to her words, letting them drown out the echoes of my parents' scorn. Beverly didn't offer money or quick fixes, just stories of grit that made me feel less alone. I thanked her, promising to keep going. Then came my first break. A local boutique owner browsing Ronald's shop noticed my sketches pinned to a corkboard. "You made these?" she asked, holding up a design for a linen dress with hand-stitched details. I nodded, explaining my vision for sustainable fashion clothes that looked good and did good. She ordered a small batch, 5 dresses for her store. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I spent nights cutting fabric, sewing under Seth's dim lamp, double-checking every seam. Ronald let me use his machines after hours, muttering, "Don't mess up my equipment." I didn't. Those dresses were my lifeline, proof I could rebuild. Delivering that first order felt like a victory. The boutique owner displayed my dresses in her window, and I stood outside staring at them like they were museum pieces. Seth snapped a photo of me grinning. "Harper Designs is real now," he said. I felt a spark of pride, but the weight of my family's betrayal lingered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jonah's smirk, heard my mom's voice calling me a disappointment. I pushed it down, channeling that anger into my work. Every stitch was a step away from them. Ronald started giving me more responsibility, alterations for high-end clients, even input on his shop's custom orders. "You've got an eye," he admitted one day, a rare compliment. I learned how to source organic cotton locally, cutting costs without cutting corners. My sketches piled up, each one bolder than the last jackets, with upcycled patches skirts from reclaimed silk. Harper Designs was taking shape not just as a dream, but as a business. Seth helped me set up a basic website, uploading photos of my work. "You're gonna kill it," he said, tweaking the layout. I believed him, even if doubt crept in at night. Beverly called again, her voice a steady anchor. "You remind me of me," she said, laughing softly. She shared how she'd once stood up to an editor who doubted her, proving him wrong with a front-page story. "Keep pushing, Tanya," she urged. I promised her I would. My family's words still stung, but I wasn't their failure anymore. I was building something real, piece by piece, with my own hands. The boutique's dresses sold out in a week, and the owner asked for more. I smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. Harper Designs wasn't just my escape, it was my fight. And I was ready to win. An email from a fashion distributor flipped my world upside down. I was at Ronald's shop stitching a client's order when my phone pinged. The message was from a Seattle-based company congratulating me on a $50,000 contract for Harper Designs. My heart skipped until I read the details. The contract listed my name, but the signature wasn't mine. Attached documents showed my designs, my pitch, but the deal was finalized with my brother Jonah as the point of contact. My parents, June and Hugh, were listed as co-signers. They'd forged everything, cutting me out of my own work. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling over the sewing machine. This wasn't just a mistake, it was theft. Jonah had taken my portfolio from the startup fair, the one he'd sabotaged, and used it to secure a deal behind my back. June and Hugh, who'd called me a failure, had signed off on it. I saved the email, printed the attachments, and drove straight to their house in Boise. I wasn't going to let this slide. I stormed into their living room, papers in hand. "Explain this," I said, tossing the contract on the coffee table. Jonah leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug look on his face. "You left your designs lying around," he said. "I made them profitable." June jumped in before I could respond. "You're so selfish, Tanya," she snapped. "Jonah's trying to save this family while you play dress-up." Hugh nodded, sipping his coffee. "You're ungrateful. He's doing what you couldn't." Their words cut deep, but I held my ground. "You forged my signature," I said, pointing to the documents. "You took my work." Jonah shrugged. "Prove it," he challenged, his voice dripping with arrogance. June's eyes narrowed. "You always make everything about you," she said. "We're just protecting Jonah's future." I wanted to scream, to flip the table, but I didn't. I grabbed the papers and left their accusations ringing in my ears. They weren't just dismissing me, they were erasing me. Back at Seth's apartment, I was pacing, the contract crumpled in my fist. My phone rang. "Beverly." "Don't let their poison sink in," she said, her voice calm but firm. She told me about a time she'd been betrayed by a colleague who claimed her work, how she'd fought back by outshining them. "Hate will drag you down, Tanya," she warned. "Prove them wrong by succeeding." I took a deep breath, her words pulling me back from the edge. She was right. I couldn't let their lies define me. I threw myself into Harper Designs, working harder than ever at Ronald's shop. Every morning, I was the first one in cutting patterns, testing new fabrics, organic hemp, recycled polyester, anything that could make my designs stand out. Ronald noticed the change. "You're on a mission," he said one day, watching me adjust a jacket's collar. I nodded, not explaining. My anger fueled every stitch, every sketch. I wasn't just building a brand, I was building a wall they couldn't break. My first client's dresses had sold out, and she ordered more, 10 this time, plus jackets. I spent nights sketching, tweaking designs to be bolder, sleeker, more sustainable. Seth helped me source local suppliers, cutting deals for eco-friendly threads. "You're unstoppable," he said, uploading new photos to my website. I smiled, but the contract theft gnawed at me. I kept the printed email hidden in my sketchbook, a reminder of what they'd done. I wasn't fighting for revenge, I was fighting for me. Ronald gave me a bigger role, letting me handle custom orders for his high-end clients. I designed a gown for a local influencer using reclaimed silk that shimmered under light. She wore it to a Boise charity event and orders trickled in from her followers. Harper Designs was growing not just as a side hustle, but as a name people noticed. I saved every penny dreaming of a studio where no one could touch my work. Beverly called again, checking in. "You're doing it," she said, her voice proud. She shared how she'd once rebuilt her career after a setback pitching stories until she landed a major byline. "Keep your eyes on the prize," she urged. I promised her I would. Jonah, June, and Hugh thought they could bury me, but I was rising. Harper Designs wasn't just clothes, it was my defiance, my proof they were wrong. I'd make them regret ever doubting me, not with words, but with success. When my designs started turning heads, the attacks came. Harper Designs was gaining ground in Boise's fashion scene. My sustainable pieces, recycled denim jackets, organic cotton dresses popping up in local boutiques. Clients loved the story fashion that didn't harm the planet. Orders poured in from small shops to influencers posting my work online. I was hustling at Ronald's tailoring shop by day, sewing late into the night at Seth's apartment. My website, now sleek thanks to Seth's tweaks, was getting hits. For the first time, I felt like I was winning. Then my phone lit up with notifications. A post on X shared hundreds of times stopped me cold. It was from Jonah, my brother. "Tanya Reid stole my designs and abandoned our family," it read, with photos of my Harper Designs pieces labeled as his. He claimed I'd taken his ideas from the startup fair and left him to struggle. Comments piled up calling me a fraud, a traitor. My inbox filled with questions from clients. "Is this true?" One boutique owner wrote, canceling an order. Another influencer pulled my designs from her feed. My stomach twisted, but I didn't panic. This was Jonah's next move, and I wasn't going to let it break me. I showed Seth the post at his kitchen table. "He's lying," I said, scrolling through the comments. Seth, squinting at his laptop, nodded. "We'll prove it," he said, already digging into Jonah's online trail. He was a graphic designer, not a detective, but he knew his way around the internet. We spent hours combing through Jonah's profiles looking for cracks. A pattern emerged. Jonah had been tagging a local designer, Travis Walsh, in posts about collabs that never materialized. I recognized the name. Travis was a flashy rival known for trendy but unsustainable clothes. His brand was all hype, no substance, and he'd been losing ground to my eco-friendly designs. "Seth, check this," I said, pointing to a direct message Jonah had sent to Travis, accidentally left public in a screenshot. "She's stealing my work." "Let's take her down," it read, with a winking emoji. My blood ran cold. Jonah wasn't just attacking me. He was working with Travis to ruin Harper Designs. Seth cross-referenced their posts, finding more connections, shared events, mutual followers, even a photo of them at a Boise bar grinning over drinks. Travis had the resources to amplify Jonah's lies, and they were betting on sinking my reputation. I called Beverly that night, my voice shaking with frustration. "Jonah's dragging my name through the mud," I told her, reading her the post. She listened quietly, then spoke. "They're scared of you, Tanya," she said. "I once had a rival spread lies about my reporting. I didn't fight dirty, I outworked them." Her advice hit hard. "Don't stoop to their level, shine brighter instead." I thanked her, her words steadying me. I wasn't going to let their smear campaign win. Back at Ronald's shop, I doubled down. Clients were hesitating, but I reached out, emailing each one with proof of my design process, sketches, timestamps, even fabric receipts. "Harper Designs is mine," I wrote, attaching photos of my work in progress. Some clients came back impressed by my transparency. I pushed out new designs, a bold linen coat, a skirt with hand-stitched embroidery, posting them online, with captions about sustainability. "This is who I am," I wrote, letting my work speak louder than Jonah's lies. Seth kept digging, pulling up an old email from Travis to a local boutique offering discounts if they dropped my line. "He's playing dirty," Seth said, forwarding me the proof. I saved everything: screenshots, emails, timestamps. This wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about exposing their game. I started preparing for a bigger stage, knowing Boise's fashion community was watching. Jonah and Travis thought they could bury me with rumors, but I was building a case. Ronald noticed my intensity at the shop. "You're sewing like you're going to war," he said, eyeing a perfectly tailored jacket. I gave a tight smile. "Something like that," I replied. He didn't push, but let me use his space after hours where I sketched designs that felt like armor, sharp lines, defiant patterns. Harper Designs wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. Clients who stuck with me spread the word and new orders trickled in, despite the online storm. Beverly called again, checking in. "You're stronger than their lies," she said, sharing how she'd once faced a smear campaign but won by staying true to her work. "Keep going, Tanya," she urged. I promised I would. Jonah and Travis were plotting, but I was ready. A public showdown was coming, and I wasn't going to lose. Harper Designs was my truth, and I'd make sure everyone saw it. The Boise Fashion Fair was my shot to fight back. Months of preparation had led to this, a stage to showcase Harper Designs and clear my name. I'd poured everything into my new collection, 12 pieces each, a statement of sustainability and defiance. Organic cotton blazers with sharp tailoring, recycled silk dresses that flowed like water, upcycled denim vests with hand-stitched embroidery. Every design was mine, time-stamped and documented, ready to silence the lies. Seth helped me set up the booth, his calm focus grounding me. "You've got this," he said, adjusting a mannequin. I nodded, clutching the folder of evidence I'd gathered. The fair buzzed with energy, designers, buyers, and media packed the convention center. My booth drew eyes immediately, the fabrics gleaming under soft lights. I wore one of my own designs, a tailored coat that felt like armor. Buyers stopped by, asking about my eco-friendly process. I explained the recycled materials, the low-impact dyes, and they listened impressed. A local reporter, Judy Chen, lingered, jotting notes. "I've heard about your work," she said, her tone curious but neutral. I smiled, sensing an ally. The main event was my runway presentation. The stage lights blazed as my models walked, each piece telling my story. The crowd murmured approval, soft claps for a linen skirt, gasps for a shimmering silk gown. I stepped up to speak, my voice steady. "Harper Designs is about truth," I said, holding up my sketchbook. But some tried to take that truth from me. I opened my folder, projecting emails and screenshots onto a screen. My brother Jonah and a rival designer, Travis Walsh, forged a $50,000 contract and claimed my designs as theirs. The crowd hushed, eyes fixed on the evidence: forged signatures, Jonah's defamatory posts, Travis's messages plotting to ruin me. Judy Chen, standing near the stage, nodded as I shared her verification. She'd cross-checked my timestamps with Jonah's and Travis's files, confirming my designs were original. "These are my sketches," I said, flipping through pages dated months before their lies. "This is my work." The room erupted in whispers. Then Jonah pushed through the crowd, his face red. "She's lying," he shouted, climbing onto the stage. "Those are my ideas." His voice cracked, desperate. The crowd shifted, uneasy. A reporter in the front row stood up. "Then explain these emails," she said, pointing to the screen where Jonah's message to Travis, "Let's take her down," glowed. Another journalist chimed in. "Why are your designs identical to hers but dated later?" Jonah stammered, his eyes darting. I was inspired," he said weakly. Judy stepped forward, holding up her notes. "Ms. Reed's timestamps predate yours by months," she said firmly. "The evidence is clear." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some shaking their heads at Jonah. He tried to interrupt, grabbing a mic. "She's twisting everything," he yelled, but his words faltered under the reporter's questions. "Did you forge the contract?" one asked. "Why work with Travis Walsh?" another pressed. Jonah's face flushed, his hands shaking as he backed away. "This isn't fair," he muttered, stumbling off the stage. The crowd parted, watching him leave, his head down, humiliated. Travis was nowhere to be seen, likely sensing the tide had turned. I took a deep breath, facing the audience. Harper Designs is my truth, I said, my voice clear. I built it despite their lies. The room exploded in applause, people standing, clapping louder than I'd ever heard. Buyers approached, offering cards. A boutique owner who'd canceled an order earlier apologized, placing a new one on the spot. Judy Chen shook my hand. That took guts, she said, promising a feature on Harper Designs. I thanked her, my chest tight with relief. Back at the booth, Seth high-fived me. You crushed it, he said, grinning. The rest of the fair was a blur, clients ordering pieces, reporters snapping photos, influencers posting my runway clips online. My collection sold out with pre-orders stacking up. Harper Designs wasn't just a brand anymore, it was a movement. The crowd's cheers echoed in my mind, a validation louder than any lie Jonah or Travis could spread. As I packed up, a reporter asked for a quote. This is just the start, I said, folding a vest carefully. Harper Designs is here to stay. The fair had been my battleground, and I'd won not just for me, but for every design I'd fought to create. Jonah's exit marked the end of his hold over me. I was free, and Harper Designs was unstoppable. After the fair, Harper Designs became unstoppable. The Boise Fashion Fair had put my name on the map, and buyers were calling before I'd even packed up my booth. A Seattle boutique chain offered a $100,000 contract for a seasonal collection, 20 pieces, all sustainable, to be sold across their 5 stores. I signed the deal at Seth's kitchen table, my hands steady as I inked my name. Another contract followed, this time from a Portland eco-fashion retailer wanting exclusive designs for their spring line. Harper Designs was no longer a dream, it was a force in the sustainable fashion world. I leased a small studio in downtown Boise, a space with enough room for sewing machines and fabric rolls. Seth helped me move in, hauling bolts of organic cotton and recycled silk. You're a big deal now, he teased, setting up a rack. I laughed, but the weight of my journey lingered. Every stitch, every sketch had been a fight against the lies and betrayal that tried to bury me. Now my designs were in boutiques, on influencers' feeds, even featured in a regional fashion magazine. Harper Designs stood for something bigger: resilience crafted by my own hands. News about Jonah trickled in through industry whispers. His attempt to sell my stolen designs had backfired after the fair. Judy Chen's article, published the next week, detailed his fraud-forged contracts, fake claims, and his plot with Travis Walsh. The piece went viral, shared across X and fashion blogs. Jonah's reputation crumbled, and a local business board banned him from operating in Boise, citing unethical practices. His so-called ventures collapsed, leaving him with nothing but excuses. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His downfall was his own doing. June and Hugh faced their own reckoning. Their house, the one I'd left behind, went into foreclosure. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that they'd sunk their savings into Jonah's failed schemes, believing his promises of quick wealth. When those fell apart, so did their finances. They were bankrupt, forced to sell their home and move to a cramped apartment. I felt a pang of pity, but it passed. They'd chosen Jonah over me, called me selfish, useless, a disappointment. Their ruin wasn't my burden. One morning, a letter arrived at my studio, forwarded from Seth's address. It was from June, handwritten, her words shaky on the page. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she wrote. "We were wrong about Jonah, about everything. She asked to meet, to talk, to make things right." I read it twice, then set it aside. The apology came too late, after years of their scorn. I didn't reply. I didn't need their approval anymore. My strength came from within, from the work I'd built despite them. I threw myself into Harper Designs, scaling up production. I hired 2 local seamstresses, teaching them my techniques for sustainable fabrics. We worked late, cutting patterns for a new collection: jackets with reclaimed leather accents, dresses that blended organic linen with upcycled lace. Clients loved the authenticity, the story behind each piece. A Denver Fashion Expo invited me to showcase, offering a prime slot. I accepted, sketching bolder designs, ones that screamed confidence. My studio hummed with energy, fabric scraps piling up as orders poured in. Seth stopped by, often tweaking my website to handle the traffic. "You're blowing up," he said, showing me analytics, thousands of hits, hundreds of orders. I smiled, grateful for his support. Beverly called too, her voice warm with pride. "You did this on your own terms," she said, recounting how she'd once rebuilt her career after a betrayal. "You're unstoppable, Tanya." Her words echoed my resolve. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving, free from the shadows of my family's doubt. A new contract landed, a partnership with a national eco-fashion brand worth $500,000. I signed it in my studio, surrounded by sketches and swatches. The deal meant expanding, maybe opening a second location. I hired a small team, including a marketing assistant who pushed Harper designs onto bigger platforms. My name was now synonymous with sustainable style, a beacon for designers fighting to be heard. Every sale, every feature was proof I'd risen above the lies. I stood in my studio one evening, folding a finished dress. The silence was peaceful, not heavy. Jonah, June, Hugh. They were part of a past I'd outgrown. Their betrayal had forged me, but it didn't define me. Harper Designs was more than a company. It was my rebellion, my freedom, my rebirth. I didn't need their apologies or their regret. I had my work, my vision, and a future I'd built with my own hands. That was enough.